He wasn't exactly the picture of integrity when you began working together. So do you regret working with Donald Trump in the first place?
Not in the slightest. I knew, I think, everything there was to know about Donald Trump before I took the job. It's pretty hard to miss. Nobody's ever called me naive, at least not seriously. But I did believe that he would have been affected by the weight of the job, the presidency of the United States. He would understand the implications of the issues he had to decide, just like 44 presidential predecessors. I believe that. And my book is really the story of how over 17 months I came to understand I was wrong about it. And he will leave office not understanding the presidency any better than the day he started, sadly.
And what's the problem with Mr. Trump, with President Trump? A matter of policy or a matter of character?
Well, he has no character. I mean, let's just start there. He doesn't have any philosophy either. He doesn't think in policy terms like we expect political leaders to do. This is all about Donald Trump. And he divides the world into two categories of people, winners and losers. He is a winner. He is not a loser. Therefore, he did not lose the 2020 election. It was stolen from him. And that's the way he's behaved at enormous cost to himself and substantial cost to the United States. Now, I think we can repair that damage. That's after one term. But it's also why, for the first time in my political life, I didn't vote for the Republican nominee for president, because I feared 2 terms of Donald Trump might have caused irreparable damage.
Do you think that he genuinely believes the election was stolen, or is he playing politics?
Oh, look, this is entirely made up in his mind. But he has a way of saying, it's not a question of whether he's lying or telling the truth. He makes up what he wants the world to be and then tries to persuade others that, in fact, that's the way it is. And it's a phenomenon that, for him, has proven a successful formula in business and so on. It's not so successful in politics, thank goodness.
If he is, and the thrust of your book is ultimately to say that he's not fit for high office, why do you think in excess of 70 million Americans voted for him just a few weeks ago?
This, in large measure, is the traditional Republican vote coming out for him. It's a vote that fears the left wing of the Democratic Party. I certainly fear the left wing of the Democratic Party. I don't know what a Biden administration is going to bring. I didn't vote for either one of them because they were both unacceptable to me for different reasons. But it is a big mistake, and commentators in the United States make it as well as commentators abroad. This block of votes is not a block of granite. It's not unalterable. It's not something he controls. And I think the tragic events of Wednesday have caused that support to erode even faster than I thought it would. And on the 20th of January at noon, while he will still have influence thereafter, to be sure, bear in mind he will have no power. And it's very different being an ex-president than being a president. I think for those of us who want a renewed Republican Party, I want a Reaganite Republican Party. I don't underestimate the amount of work to be done, but we will do it. And Donald Trump's influence will continue to diminish, I think, ever more rapidly.
Do you think what happened earlier this week was decisive in removing Donald Trump from public life going forward? Do you think there's any chance that he could bounce back in 4 years' time?
Zero chance. Again, I'm not saying he will have no influence whatever.
He'll do his rallies. He'll still have his rallies, won't he?
Well, yeah, that's because he likes the attention. But I think his supporters in Congress, many of whom were simply intimidated into this to begin with. I think that's the good news. They don't believe in it. They were just afraid of him. That's better than the alternative. I think, as they say in the American South, that they are running from Trump like scalded dogs. And the more of them who run and the faster they run, the better. I think we can talk to them about the Republican Party future much differently now, tragically, because of what Trump himself did on Wednesday. I mean, let's be clear about that. He incited that mob to attack the Capitol, and he is responsible for it.
Can you tell me about your emotions as you watched that footage play out of Capitol Hill being stormed?
Well, it was without any doubt one of the saddest days of my life. I mean, I think back to Reagan being shot in 1981, nearly being killed. That was a pretty depressing day. But watching these people in the Capitol, um, really, it's a form of sacrilege in a secular sense to desecrate the Capitol like that. And they couldn't, it was clear many of them didn't understand what they were doing. That's a tragedy as well. But I think the overwhelming majority of Americans understand that this is unacceptable behavior. No matter what part of the political spectrum people come from, it's flatly unacceptable.
Obviously, Donald Trump very much challenged virtue signaling, woke culture. He didn't start any wars. In fact, he was at one point being chalked up for the Nobel Peace Prize. And of course, let's not forget that the economy was in pretty rude health pre-pandemic. So there were, I guess, some achievements in his presidency.
Well, of course, there were plenty of decisions I agreed with, but he was not governing on the basis of a philosophy. I called his decisions an archipelago of dots. His economic policy proved to be very successful. It was orthodox republicanism. He appointed over 200 judges and 3 Supreme Court justices who are, I think, among the most conservative ever put on the courts. That's a real positive accomplishment. And there were other accomplishments too. But none of that is sufficient to overtake the way he has left the office or the way he conducted himself. We ought to be able to have a normal person as president pursuing a conservative philosophy. Ronald Reagan was a normal person. In fact, he was among the most optimistic presidents that we've ever had. And I think if you read his farewell address, as we call it, his last statement of his view of the country, that is exactly what has been successful for Republicans and what we need to get back to.
His decision not to attend the inauguration on the 20th of January is constitutionally unprecedented. It's also puerile and pathetic, isn't it?
Well, it's not constitutionally unprecedented. John Adams didn't stick around for Theodore Roosevelt's inauguration. And, you know, that was the inauguration, the second most significant election in American history. George Washington's first being the most significant. Why? Because it was the first time after an election that we had had a change of party in the United States, peacefully. And in his inaugural address in 1801, Jefferson said, "We are all Republicans, we are all Federalists." And Biden could say something like that. It would be better if Trump attended the inauguration because it would be a sign to his supporters that he accepted defeat and that they should accept it if he can accept it. So he denies his supporters in the country that. On the other hand, I have to say he's so self-centered that it's hard to imagine that he wouldn't do something outrageous to draw attention to himself and spoil the event overall. So it's not an entirely easy question, but I think it's better that he not attend.
Is he a racist man?
You know, I've never heard him say racist things. I think if people had heard that around him, they would have resigned in droves. I think that requires a bigger intellect than he has. I think he's just Donald Trump. I think that's all there is to it. There's nothing else inside there.
Does he pose a threat to U.S. security in the coming days?
I can't deny there's some threat, but I don't think people ought to hyperventilate over this. I think what we need to do is grit our teeth and get through the next 12 days.
And finally, Mr. Bolton, what was the low points in your time at the White House working under Donald Trump?
Well, there were a lot of low points. That's why I wrote a 500-page book.
Which is a brilliant book, The Room Where It Happened. Highly recommended. Perfect lockdown reading. But yeah, do you want to give me an example then of just how bad things got?
Well, I think the president's focus was always on himself. So, for example, right near the end, just within a month before I resigned, he agreed to a peace deal with the Taliban in Afghanistan that I thought was catastrophically bad. But what he thought he would do to show his role in the deal is bring the Taliban to Camp David. Now, that's Probably not as bad as having a riot take over Congress. I admit that, but it was a sad commentary to think that you'd invite these terrorists to Camp David. And that was, as I say, pretty close to when I did resign, and I know that was a factor in my thinking.